Hey there, I'm Emily, host of the 3315 Hear the Blessed, the show where we talk about being a young Christian in crazy times. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the 3315. Before we dive into today's topic, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. To those of you who haven't seen my announcement on Instagram, or maybe you have, I am now posting all my episodes on YouTube as well. And I may try to post other kinds of videos on there, but yes, now you can find all my episodes there as well. Anywho, let's get into today's topic. Today's topic comes from a sermon that I heard not too long ago about the question of why do certain things happen? Is it our fault or God's? I'll link the sermon in the description of this episode so you can check it out. Anyways, when I say certain things, I mostly mean things we don't understand. Tragedies, events in our lives that make us ask why God. In Bible times, especially the Old Testament, it was believed when you were born with some sort of ailment, such as leprosy, or you developed it later in life, that was God punishing you for your or your own parents' sins. And yes, at times that was the case, but many times, just like today, these things just happen. Getting stuck in traffic, accidentally spilling your drink, things like that just happen, not because of what you did or God causing it. A good example of this can be found in the book of John chapter 9, the story of when Jesus heals a blind man. As Jesus was walking along, he saw a man who had been blind from birth. Rabbi, his disciples asked him, why was this man born blind? Was it because of his own sins or his parents' sins? It was not because of his sins or his parents' sins, Jesus answered. This happened so the power of God could be seen in him. We must quickly carry out the task assigned us by the one who sent us. The night is coming, and then no one can work. But while I am here in the world, I am the light of the world. Then he spit on the ground, made mud with the saliva, and spread the mud over the blind man's eyes. He told him, go wash yourself in the pool of Siloam. So the man went and washed and came back seeing. His neighbors and others who knew him as a blind beggar asked each other, isn't this the man who used to sit and beg? Some said he was. Others said, no, he just looks like him. But the beggar kept saying, yes, I am the same one. They asked, who healed you? What happened? He told them, the man they call Jesus made mud and spread it over my eyes and told me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash yourself. So I went and washed, and now I can see. Where is he now? They asked. I don't know, he replied. Then they took the man who had been blind to the Pharisees because it was on the Sabbath that Jesus had made the mud and healed him. The Pharisees asked the man all about it, so he told them, he put the mud over my eyes, and when I washed it away, I could see. Some of the Pharisees said, this man is not from God, for he is working on the Sabbath. Others said, but how could an ordinary sinner do such miraculous signs? There was a deep division of opinion among them. Then the Pharisees again questioned the man who had been blind and demanded, what's your opinion about this man who healed you? The man replied, I think he must be a prophet. The Jewish leaders still refused to believe the man had been blind and could now see. So they called in his parents. They asked him, is this your son? Was he born blind? If so, how can he now see? His parents replied, we know this is our son and that he was born blind, but we don't know how he can see or who healed him. Ask him. He is old enough to speak for himself. His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jewish leaders who had announced that anyone saying Jesus was the Messiah would be expelled from the synagogue. That's why they said, he is old enough, ask him. So for the second time they called in the man who had been blind and told him, God should get the glory for this because we know this man Jesus is a sinner. I don't know whether he is a sinner, the man replied, but I know this. I was blind and now I can see. But what did he do? They asked. How did he heal you? Look, the man exclaimed. I told you once. Didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? Then they cursed him and said, you are his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. Why, that's very strange, the man replied. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from? We know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. Ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. You were born a total sinner, they answered. Are you trying to teach us? And they threw him out of the synagogue. When Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man and asked, do you believe in the Son of Man? The man answered, who is he, sir? I want to believe in him. You have seen him, Jesus said, and he is speaking to you. Yes, Lord, I believe, the man said, and he worshipped Jesus. Then Jesus told him, I entered the world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind and to show those who think they see that they are blind. Some Pharisees who were standing nearby heard him and asked, are you saying we are blind? If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty, Jesus replied, but you remain guilty because you claim you can see. Alright, let's break this down. As for why the disciples ask, whose fault is it that the man was born blind? That's because, as I said before, in those days it was believed that if you or your parents sinned, then you would be given some kind of affliction from God. This belief did not just come out of nowhere, it came from the Old Testament, where many times that was the case. The Israelites being punished after making a golden calf in the wilderness, the plagues brought on to Egypt, King David being punished for what he did to Bathsheba and her husband. But this was not the case. And don't misinterpret Jesus saying it was to show off the power of God as him saying God made the man born blind just for that purpose. No, it just means that he happened to be born blind and God planned to use that for his glory. That's a big part of how Jesus drew others to him. By healing people, whether or not it was their fault they ended up like that, he could not stay in one spot as he wanted to spread his ministry all over to Jews and non-Jews alike. So everywhere he went, he would heal a few people and then move on, and others would follow. Jesus didn't just heal the man to heal him, he healed him so he could truly believe. In this story, it didn't just show the healing power of God, but what true faith was like. The Pharisees could not even comprehend what Jesus had done. Meanwhile, this blind man went searching for him, and when he found him, became one of his followers. A good example of this is when he healed the lame man. Lame means he could not walk, and that drew many others to him, including the Pharisee Nicodemus, who questioned him at night and was one of the first people to ever hear the beautiful words of John 3:16 alongside the disciples. And what an effect that had on him. We later learn on that Nicodemus became a secret follower of Jesus alongside another Pharisee, Joseph Arimathea. Both of them had feared persecution, so they kept it hidden. But after the crucifixion, all of that went out the window. Joseph of Arimathea even asked to put Jesus' body in a tomb he bought. He didn't care about the persecution or even that touching a dead body would make him unclean. All he wanted was to honor Jesus with a proper final rest, or rather temporary resting place. At any moment, he could have just stopped, and no one but God, and maybe Nicodemus, would have known he was a follower of Christ. A big example of when what happens can be on you was when Paul, still Saul at the time, was made blind. Before he became a disciple of Jesus, he was one of his biggest haters. Crazy, I know, but Paul was a Pharisee, and after the death and resurrection of Christ, he went around persecuting other Christians. He was there for the stoning of Stephen the first martyr, and he was given letters to go around and kill or arrest other Christians. He was a feared and hated man among the early believers. But then, in Acts chapter 9, verses 1 through 19, meanwhile, Saul was uttering threats with every breath and was eager to kill the Lord's followers. So, he went to the high priest. He requested letters addressed to the synagogues in Damascus, asking for their cooperation in the arrest of any followers of the way he found there. He wanted to bring them in, both men and women, back to Jerusalem in chains. As he was approaching Damascus on this mission, a light from heaven suddenly shone down around him. He fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, "Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me?" "Who are you, Lord?" Saul asked. And the voice replied, "I am Jesus, the one you are persecuting. Now get up and go into the city, and you will be told what you must do." The men with Saul stood speechless, for they heard the sound of someone's voice but saw no one. Saul picked himself up off the ground, but when he opened his eyes, he was blind. So his companions led him by the hand to Damascus. He remained there blind for 3 days and did not eat or drink. Now, there was a believer in Damascus named Ananias. The Lord spoke to him in a vision, calling, "Ananias!" "Yes, Lord," he replied. The Lord said, "Go over to Straight Street, to the house of Judas. When you get there, ask for a man from Tarsus named Saul. He is praying to me right now. I have shown him a vision of a man named Ananias coming in and laying hands on him so he can see again." "But Lord," exclaimed Ananias, "I've heard many people talk about the terrible things this man has done to the believers in Jerusalem. And he is authorized by the leading priest to arrest everyone who calls upon your name." But the Lord said, "Go, for Saul is my chosen instrument to take my message to the Gentiles and to kings, as well as the people of Israel, and I will show him how much he must suffer for my name's sake." So Ananias went and found Saul. He laid his hands on him and said, "Brother Saul, the Lord Jesus who appeared to you on the road has sent me that you might regain your sight and be filled with the Holy Spirit." Instantly, something like scales fell from Saul's eyes and he regained his sight. Then he got up and was baptized. Afterward, he ate some food and regained his strength. Look at that. It was his actions that led to his blindness. He had to be made temporarily blind to truly see. Once he was healed, he became one of the most devoted followers of Christ in the New Testament. He wrote over half the books in the New Testament, suffered getting shipwrecked, attempts to take his life, being under house arrest in Rome, and so much more. But after that one experience, he never persecuted Jesus again, but instead he spent the rest of his life bringing others to him. A good example of when it's no one's fault in more recent times is the story of Christopher Reeve, famous for playing Superman until a tragic accident left him paralyzed and living in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. Instead of giving up on life after his career as an actor was ended, he became determined to try and walk again, going through physical therapy, and even started the Reeve Foundation to research spinal cord injuries and help those with disabilities. He became an inspiration both on and off the silver screen, all because of that incident. Now, that's not to say he wouldn't have done anything like that if not for the incident, but if it didn't happen, he never would have started the Reeve Foundation. Sometimes you have to go through something bad for good things to happen, like you do badly in a class, or you get a tutor to help you, or something I'm sure many of us went through as kids, being told not to touch a hot stove or iron and then learning why you shouldn't the hard way. It may not always be pleasant, but we learn and grow from difficult experiences. Now, it doesn't have to be a traumatizing experience, but we do tend to learn better a lot of times the hard way. Of course, sometimes bad things can happen to you because of other people. Someone accidentally bumps into you, makes you spill your drink, a bully steals from you, a criminal commits a crime and hurts others. The actions of others can and will affect other people as well, and that includes your own actions. That's why you always need to think carefully of how your actions affect others. Do you want to cause harm or be like Jesus? So, to answer the question of why, well, it's all a matter of circumstances, and sometimes it's your own actions, or even God's, or both, and sometimes it's no one. Sometimes things just happen due to no one's fault, but God can still use that for His and your own good. You can even do that as well, just like Christopher Reeve. Don't be defined by whatever horrible thing may have happened and whatever condition it left you in. Turn it on its head into something beautiful. And I bet you are wondering how you can tell the difference. It can be tricky when it comes to things that are your fault. You will know because it was your own actions that led to this, though it gets tricky when, that wasn't your intention or it was an accident, such as when you break a rule and get in trouble, or when you didn't wear a coat when it's freezing outside and you get sick, or not following the rules of the road and maybe you crash your car or you get a ticket because a cop noticed. Things caused by your own actions. God punishing you does fall under this category as well, but it's not out of malice. It's like when a parent punishes you because your actions have consequences and you have to face them. And if you don't face them, how will you learn that that thing is bad and not do it again? Of course, you can always ignore it, but you still learn that it wasn't right to do that thing. As for when it's God trying to make you learn from a hard experience, that can be brought on by your own actions, of course, or sometimes things that just happen with no explanation is the cause. And this, of course, goes hand in hand with forming a relationship with God. If you don't know Him, how will you recognize His intervention, His discipline? Now, I'm not saying He'll put you through traumatizing events, but difficult ones, as it's through hard work that one learns and grows. And finally, there's things that just happen. You get sick, someone accidentally bumps into you and makes you spill your drink. You get stuck in traffic and end up late to work or school. Sometimes things just happen and it's no one's fault. It sucks, but that's the truth. It's a part of life. It always sucks when bad things happen, and it's okay to feel ticked off. That's normal, but don't stay upset. Try to look ahead to when things will get better. So, the next time you find yourself asking why, just remember that whatever is going on, God is in control and He can turn it around into something amazing. God bless you.